Alright, MS Van Wolverine running MS version 6.22 20th Anniversary Edition 2003. Chapter 6 Managing Your Floppy Disk. Alright, overview. Disk with the computer file with the cabinet managing with the computer file system include with the only cheap the trap with the file with the scrap with the read with the trap with the off with the taking care with the floppy disk with the main wave with the prepare with the store with the information floppy disk concept the underline with the floppy disk handle with the kind of overall of the microcomputers of the MS staff commands deal with the entire floppy disk, not individual files. For example, you must prepare with a new floppy disk, either the process called formatting or at least commonly initialize with the either the should be exactly copy of the floppy disk. You do not either the copy file separately. Copy the entire floppy disk with the one command with the chapter suggested ways to handle the floppy disk. Briefly describe the MS DOS over the floppy. Files on floppy disk show you how the following. Prepare floppy disk use the format command. Duplicate floppy disk copy command with the array of the contents. To floppy disk com. Command analyze the report with you with the floppy disk storage grab base check disk command assigning change with the deletion volume label identify the name of the disk over the with the label command disable the volume label the disk the volume command. Disk copy the disk commands are floppy disk only with the number of the MS dot with the command show for the format check disk label the volume the U with the bowl with the floppy disk with the hard disk with an additional command with the backup with the restore U with the extensively primarily with the hard disk. Depending on the chapter, the most appropriate the disk management commands are prescribed in the chapter of the chapter 9 managing your hard disk, the chapter 10 protecting your disk files. Handling floppy disk. Floppy disk, the remarkable durable, especially 3.5 with the type of the hard disk plastic shell with the use of the floppy disk depends on how often you use the core of the butt, even more important how you treat it. Handle your floppy disk with the same care with the U of the wind handling value with the recording tape with the photograph, avoid touching the floppy disk with the U of the opening with the projector with the tab with the zero. Fingerprints can cause and shorten life with the floppy disk that can damage the destroy the data. But keep the floppy disk with the game of the magnets of the score of the magnetic influence of the telephone, electric motor, television. Keep food drinks away from the floppy disk. Same with the goes for cigarettes and cigars in the pipe of the ashtray. Do not fold split with a manipulate floppy disk. Do not pile with any other objects. And do not write on 5.25 inch floppy disk labeled with a pencil, ballpoint pen, or any other sharp instrument. Use the felt tip marker. Store the floppy disk in a safe place when not using them. Protect them from the extreme heat and the cold with the humidity contact with the other objects. Many products available to store in floppy disks include plastic bag with vinyl pockets and that three-ring binder handling file with the file folders. All other good protection that are not necessary can make it easily with the organized floppy disks and store them safely, referring to them rather than leaving them scattered around the desk. Although in an office mild environment compared with the factory, the shop floor, with the floppy disk damage, innocuously object with a paperclip that has been stored with a magnetic plastic paperclip holder with a magnetized letter opening with the electric pen also sharp with the telephone answering machine. You put a letter down on the top of the floppy disk, laying it on your desk. You can tell easy to how much coffee the company with a heavy object the letter will realize when the floppy disk is underneath. Safe place for the floppy disk are in the computer. Protective storage information from the enzymes of the two more valuable assets. The damaged floppy disk can cause you both and some protect floppy disks accordingly. Backing up with the floppy disk. Even though you treat the floppy disk with care, you can still be enslaved with the damage of the accident files can be inadvertently changed and erased. Eventually, floppy disks will simply wear out. The backing up of the backup copy of the floppy disk limits of the amount of the information time that you use that something goes wrong with the time it takes the most of the copies could be one better investment. List floppy disk and copy of the program, copy to protect the cannot duplicate with the original, make a copy of the program before you even use it, even if you install the program with the hard disk, the store with the original floppy disk in the safe place. Use the copy of something and have the copy to make another copy of the original. Always keep the original stored safely. Your collection of data will grow with the application program, the work with the process of the spreadsheet, backup of the floppy disk contain data, whether the value of the information contained with the top of the would take with recreate with the greater than value of the blank floppy disk. Few minutes of the take to make a copy, keep the backup of the copies of the safe place. Use the computer comforting throughout the ship with something for unforeseen happening, but you're unprotected. How information is stored on floppy disk. Information stored on floppy disk, much of the music, video, with the record, with the tape, with the script, with the MS, with the floppy disk, help with the understanding command, with the U, with the manage, with the floppy disk. What is the floppy disk? We call floppy disk actual consist of the two parts of the disk and plain plastic coated with a magnetic material with a protected plastic jacket with a hard shell with a figure 2, 5 1/4 with the floppy disk with the floppy jacket and 6 2. Next page with the front and the back of the 3 1/2 floppy disk with a hard shell. The dash line with the figures 6 1 and 6 2 show that I have with the coded disk line with and include with the protect the jacket with the magnetic coating and shovel the valuable through the opening of the jacket with the 5 1/4 floppy disk and the dark area with the figure 6 1 with the spring load of the chart with the normally cover the opening with the 3 1/2 inch floppy disk moves the side with the floppy disk drive with the provide the axis with the magnetic coating hole in the center with the disk row around with the drive of the motor with the spin of the disk and that can be contained with can be written with the record with the read with the playback with the right project nods with the slide with the particular file with the floppy disk being erased and chain with the pocket of the file in the core of the floppy disk with the color right protect with a notch for the one of the small tabs of the include the block sub floppy disk with the protect 3.5-inch floppy disk with the right with the protect side up toward the edge of the floppy disk until the hole with the floppy disk shell is open to permit the file with the floppy disk to be chained with the raise with the remove of the tape with the move of the slide down with the until the hole is protected closed. Protect the MS-DOS floppy disk and set the way with protect each of the application program floppy disk that you have the application program manual tells you otherwise. How much for the MS-DOS keep track of the files? Information recorded with the floppy disk narrow concentric circle with the color with the track with these are 40 such track with a low density of 360 kilobyte with the floppy disk with 80 tracks on the high density 2.25 inch and 3.5-inch floppy disk with the track with the divide with the two small area with the called sectors, each of which can hold 512 bytes. Figure 6.3 show how the tracks and sectors are laid out with the floppy disk simplicity of the illustration showing only 4 tracks. The sidetrack with the sector for the name of the beginning of the file with the scroll with the power with the directory enter with the, you can see with the information you want to with the directory command with the MS-DOS can enter the name of the sector floppy disk and the side with the track with the sector's number just as you can find any seat with a theater and section row and seat and number. The floppy disk and capacity there are 2 low density 5.25 floppy disks numbered 0 through 39 making 40 and all the sectors the one numbered 1 through 9 with a total 360 sectors with 40 track with 9 sectors per tracked on each side. Each sector holds 512 bytes. With the 2 sides of lower density floppy disks have the actual capacity of 3,686 and 640 bytes throughout, not of all available for files. High density 5.25 floppy disk depth, the 80 track with the number to 0 through 79, each of which 15 sectors total with 1,200 sectors per sided sector stored with the 512 bytes for the 2 sides of the high density floppy disk can hold 1,228,800 bytes or 1.2 megabytes. 3.5 floppy disk that has 80 tracks per side with depending on the capacity with the 9, 18, and 36 sectors per track with a shield with the 512 third sector with the 9 sector. Floppy disk can hold 737,280 bytes or 720 kilobytes with the 18 sector floppy disk, 1.44 megabytes and 36 in the 6 floppy disk, 2.8 megabytes. Volume label. Any disk you can assign with the name of the volume label identified with the content volume label can be up to 11 characters long. You can have the same character allowed in the file with the name plus the space as, and you can assign the volume label to the format disk at any time later with the MS-DOS over the volume label the disk display with it when you use the directory check disk label to the volume command. Volume label identification only we can use the command and specify with the disk. Alright, preparing for example. The example of the chapter required with only one floppy disk, the version 5 of the later with the MS-DOS for the format command with the more sophisticated the earlier versions for the new with the floppy disk had been formatted. Here with the revision MS-DOS, use any of the floppy disk does not contain any of the flags you want to keep. For example, the erase any tab of the floppy disk, put the floppy disk in drive A. Preparing a floppy disk for U with the F. You've seen with the format command prohibit the floppy disk for the U with the floppy disk can be either previously formatted have with the formatting me with no longer U with the existing files, so they're not copy the format the floppy disk that contains that files you need. Carrying with the format command, MS-DOS will normally check the file with the correct wording, so if the floppy disk makes any of the bad sector that would be used. Formatting MS-DOS display with the message to tell you the maximum number of the bytes the floppy disk can hold, how many bytes the defect with how many bytes are able to store in files. Beginning version 4, MS-DOS also tells you how the stores floppy disk in terms of the allocation of the units of the term of the packet of the bits of the MS-DOS instead of the reading of the writing of the disk of 1 byte at a time. Displays a floppy disk and volume series number of the disk identified with the MS-DOS assignment during the formatting mentioned earlier with the information unlikely. Note with any concern with the U, MS-DOS know with the type of the floppy disk of the you have with the format of the floppy disk accordingly you can tell with the drive with the 3.5 the 5.25 low intensity the high density floppy disk format floppy disk matches with the drive with the maximum capacity of the use the specified with the otherwise. This does not mean however that you can simply put any floppy disk in the drive and leave it in details. MS-DOS will provide appropriate floppy disk the format can expect with a half a gallon of the bucket to hold with a gallon of water. Nor you can accept the MS-DOS format 360 kilobyte or 720 kilobyte floppy disks to reliably hold 1.2 to 1.4 megabytes of information. You can, however, the format lows density floppy disk the high density drive, for example, the high density 3.5 inch running about 144 megabytes floppy disk. You can format 720 kilobyte floppy disk for the drive with the reliable 720 to 144 megabyte with the drive with the 3.5 inch drive. You can format read with the write of 360 kilobyte floppy disk in case that you should expect with 360 kilobyte floppy disk and another high density drive that come with the same 360 kilobyte driver cannot read the floppy disk reliable format command reserve this space with the floppy disk with the directory with the everything amount of storage available with the file to cover the scope of the directory varies depending on whether the floppy disk is low and density with the store capacity of the floppy disk depends on the type of the floppy disk. You use the figure 6.4 show with the floppy disk side with the tracks per the side of the bottom of the sectors per track total disk capacity of the standard two-side floppy disk drive. Format command parameters. When you view the parameter of floppy disk, the format commands have the following 6 main parameters. The format drive with the parameter 4, parameter F, the side of the parameter V, parameter label, the parameter U. Drive with the letter file with the colon with the drive with the container with the floppy disk, the format such as the B drive with the version 3.1, earlier with the U with the drive with the for bracketed MS form with the floppy disk, the current drive with the mid with the floppy bracketed drive with later version of the MS-DOS with the respond with the E with the drive later must be specified the required parameter missing return of the system prime with the 4 prime parameter 4 with 360 kilobyte with the floppy disk with a high density 5.25 inch drive. Parameter F side with the version 4 later format floppy disk capacity indicated with the side with the specified appropriate floppy disk with 160 kilobyte with 288 megabytes. You can type the side with the format shown in 6.5. You've used in 3.2, 3.3, the alternate parameters, the parameter N sectors and parameter T track with letter you specify the floppy disk capacity to give it the MS-DOS number of the sectors track of the format example to give it the dependency MS-DOS command references. Our parameter V label the version 4 of the later assigned with the floppy disk the volume label list for the parameter speed with the formatted letting you specify the volume label ahead of the time unless keep the useful to record with the volume label the MS-DOS otherwise display with the end of this format proceed if you have the earlier version MSD of the version the parameter V or volume without label works in reversing telling the MS-DOS to record the volume label at the end of the format procedure. Parameter Q inversion later will tell the MS-DOS to perform a quick format. Perform the quick format of the previously formatted disk. The MS-DOS clear with the records of the disk, then tells whether the files are stored with the disk and prepare with the disk. Any other way, nor does it check with the disk for bad sector quick format of vast. Even though it isn't the normal format, the file usable disk space available to store the new files. Parameter U they also in version 5 of the later with the instruction MS-DOS to perform an unconditional format one with a clear for the disk completely can be reversed in a unified on format command. If you're working with the repo with the later with the format command with a specifying the drive with the MS-DOS form with the disk with the current drive with the floppy disk contain with the system disk with the head with the cover with the right protect with the notch. MS-DOS erase with the earlier version of the system floppy disk with the current drive with the hard disk formatting erase with every file with the not over the MS-DOS even every program in the data file. All have been stored by certainly known with the disk with the going to be formatted. Press the enter key with the after type of the format command. Sample the preparing floppy disk, the drive A, give it the volume label the version 4 later the type of the format and the drive A, the volume and then the dock disk. You have an earlier version format volume A. Parameter V, MS-DOS asks you the floppy disk drive A, and insert the disk A with the drive A, press enter when ready. Make sure the floppy disk and drive with the press enter. But if you the version 5 of the MS-DOS first, display with a message telling you to check with the existing format, and if any of the disk that begins with the format, tell with the top of the data of the disk is formatting the version 4 later, then report progress with the message of the XX% of the disk has been formatted. If you version 3.1 earlier version MS-DOS was plays formatting well with the format disk with you using 3.2, 3.3 MS-DOS over the head of the 0 the cylinder auxiliary change until the numbers to the show of the paragraph of the term cylinder another way referring to track with the MS-DOS has formatted the floppy disk and display with the format complete. If you have version 4 later, some message followed by the report available to storage space of the support line with the variable volume serial number, the sign with the MS-DOS with the curve of the base of the current date with the time also for the moment the MS-DOS house you with the parameter of the volume DOS disk, name of the floppy disk, DOS disk, end of the report, MS-DOS asks you with the format, another disk, the format, another yes or no, type of the end for the enter, press enter. If you use the earlier disk, MS-DOS, the format, complete message, file with the prompt, the volume label 11 characters, enter or none, known the specific floppy disk for the DOS disk is following, DOS disk. MS-DOS display the report available to store the floppy disk. Ask you if you want format. Reply with no. No display with the direct disk. Give the empty with the volume. Label the direct C drive directory A drive. And then show the if you don't have the volume version 4 later, you do not see volume C serial number. Or copying a floppy disk. This command that makes exactly copy, duplicate floppy disk. The target of the floppy is limited to the later version of the MS-DOS formatted before copying this copy of the earlier version of the formatted floppy disk. This copy works only with the floppy disk. The same of the side of the capacity. For example, cannot use the copy of 360 kilobytes with the floppy disk for the formatted 1.2 megabyte 5 and a quarter floppy disk. I can give you the copy of the hard disk to any of the floppy disk, the disk copy, the command with the remain property of the disk, and targeted sort of the targeted target, and the parameter V with the sort of the letter U with the colon with the drive with the contain with the floppy disk to be copied to sort of the A, the target, letter start file with the colon, drive with the letter contain with the floppy disk, is to with the receiver, the copy, the with the B drive. And then if you have only one floppy disk source and target, it can be same letter with the disk of the A drive. The parameter V verifies and ensure the floppy disk is copied correctly. If you omit the target of the MSS combined with the floppy disk with the restore with the floppy disk, then the current drive of the omit with the target with the specify with the current drive with the restore with the MSS assumes you want to use the current drive of the prompt, you with the switch floppy, you with the disk, you with the during the copy to specify with the restore with the target with the MSS assuming that we want to with only with the current drive of the prompt, you with the floppy disk during the copy. Example of the copying of floppy disk. Example of the copy of the existing floppy disk. Duplicate the information stored for the floppy disk for the target for the floppy disk. The use of the only one of the MS off the floppy disk and store with the if you the MS dot floppy disk are not closed with the hand of the floppy disk and the one of the other application. The program of the data floppy disk the ones with the U with the example of the chapter 5 of the manager file with the will the U with the put with the floppy disk and the drive with the A proceeding to show with the target floppy disk the unformatted formatted same capacity for the same floppy disk. Remember the disk copy that works only with the target floppy disk can be formatted the same capacity as source. If you have one floppy disk drive, because you have only one floppy disk drive, the MS DOS, you must use the board source on the target floppy disk prompt you exchange the floppy disk is required. Check with the source floppy disk is in the floppy disk drive. To copy the floppy disk over the C drive, this copy the A drive, MS tape property, you the problem, put the source floppy disk, insert the source disk and drive the drive A, press any key. You put the floppy disk in and already press the MDOS tells you how many track with these instructors you decide with the copying prompt you with the floppy disk and the drive. Shift the insert target disk in the drive A, press any of the continue with the remove the source of the floppy disk for the floppy type disk of the press of the key. With the floppy disk are in format for your version of the MS-DOS format. The message tells you what happened. You have the version 6.0. MS-DOS also prompts you with the exchange of the floppy disk until the finished copy of the original MS-DOS finish. If they ask you with another copy, another diskette, yes or no. Reply no. MS-DOS version 6.2 later can read the entire floppy disk, even the hard disk with the temporary storage when right with the entire target of the disk, and illuminating numerous floppy disk changes required in previous version. If you have two floppy disks drive with the system and you have the two disks with a different drive, you can use the both system disk to copy the command only with the identical floppy disk. If they have the copy of the disk, you just ones that drive with the format following the instruction with the preceding heading with the if you have the one floppy disk drive. If your system two identical disk drive with the source of the floppy, it should be within the drive A of the source of the floppy, the drive A with the target floppy, the disk with the drive B with the type of the disk, the drive A and drive B. The MSS prompted you with the put in the floppy disk and put the target drift in drive B. Press any key. MS-DOS tells you how many tracks and sectors citing and the copy that asks you if you want to copy another. Reply N. Comparing two floppy disks, occasionally you want to know whether them two floppy disks are identical. Diskly compare with the command to compare to the flu floppy disk, the track by track with the disk compare with the can be used with only floppy disk on the same side of the capacity. You can only use the compare with the hard disk and floppy disk. No, just because the two floppy disks contain the same file, but they are not necessarily identical. They might be stored with a different. Secondly, you want to compare with them all the file floppy disks rather than floppy disks. If you use tells you the file with the compare with the command described in chapter 5 at the beginning. Your file with the specify with the file with disk compare with the command with the two parameter disk compare with the drive 1 and drive 2. Bracketed drive 1 and drive 2. Drive letters each for the file with the colon with on the drive that contain floppy disks such as A drive and B drive. The MS dot find with the differences. Split the side track with each of the shown with the compare with the error on side track 023. Example of comparing two floppy disks. Following instruction under heading of the describe the system, you have the only one floppy disk compared with the source of floppy disk with the copy. You must add the type of the disk drive A. MS-DOS prompts you with the first floppy disk, insert for the first disk, get in the drive A, press A with the continue, make sure with the continue with the domain of the drive A, then press Q, and then something will compare 80 track with the 18 second per track with the two side with the MST prompts you with the second floppy disk, insert the second disk in the drive A, press A with the key, remove the floppy disk, button the such for the floppy disk, you with the disk copy with the example with the press A, key, press the key with the necessary with the MS-DOS, continue the problem, the exchange floppy disk until the final tell the terminal accept. Ask you want to more floppy disk, compare A, okay, compare another disk, yes or no, reply no. If you have two floppy type disk drive of the system, have the two disks of the drive, the 3.5, the 5.25, but you cannot use both the drive of the disk compare commands you with the work identical floppy disk with the have with the compare disk. You're using one drive with the following instruction under the preceding heading if you have one floppy disk drive. If your system has two identical floppy disk drive with a compare with a floppy disk and drive with a B with a copy with a just made with a floppy disk drive with A with a floppy disk, U with the store with the type of the disk, compare with the drive A, the drive B, MSD prompts you put the files to insert first disk in drive A, second disk in drive B, press any key to continue. Floppy disks are already driving, so they can press the key with the MS-DOS report with any with the track with the sector side with the comparing with the reports and resolve with the comparison. I ask you with the compare with the floppy disk, compare 80 tracks with 18 sectors per track, each side, compare no. Okay, report, compare another disk set, reply no. Or checking addition of the disk. Comparable to infallible malfunction product produce error with the directory of the disk, such as the error with the rare with the check disk command helps to make sure that all the files record properly. Note if the version explains the scan disk, the program the better tool to detect and correcting disk error with the scan disk. Describe the chapter 9 managing your hard disk selection, checking disk entry. Errors. Check the disk and analyze the directory of the disk and compare with the directory entry of the location of the links for the file with the report. Errors, then file the check of the disk reports, and then file with the item, the total amount of space of the disk, with the name of the file, with the directory, with how much space of the disk remains available to source. In version 4, later, the side of each for the allocation number, the substitute of the disk for the known variable of storage. Use the size of the computer of the 640 kilobytes with how many bytes remain free. With you can use the ask the command to display with the name of each of the file disks and check with whether the files are stored and efficiently. It is possibly MS-DOS stored with the adjacent continuously with the sector of the file with the delete with the new file stored with the out with the can be fragmented with the non-adjacent sector of the fragmented file with it isn't care with the worry. The worst can happen in the MS-DOS will take with it slightly longer to read than several file with the floppy disk fragment and restore the continuous sector for the copying of the file with the empty of the formatted floppy disk with the copy command and remember the do not use the disk copy the command with the cover that makes the flow full sector by sector copy of the floppy disk stored with the file with exactly the non-adjacent sector in which they stored original floppy disk. Check with the disk command with the four parameters. Check disk drive file name parameter V and F. The drive with the file with the column with the drive with the contain with the disk. And check with the emit with the drive with the MS slash with the disk with the current drive. The bracketed file name of this file was stored with the MS slash. Check with the MS slash display with the message of the file stored with the non-contingency file sector with the wildcard character set of all files. Parameter V, display with the name of each of the directory on the file disk. Parameter F, the MS-DOS correct with any of the errors found with the directory and specify when the error is found. Example, check with the disk. Check with the floppy disk, the drive A, the CHKDSK, at drive A, the press M and stuff. The problem if you insert the floppy disk drive A with the MS-DOS display with the report may be different. Example of the 360 gigabyte floppy disk. No, the check disk report with the MS-DOS 6.2 later include with the paragraph at the end of the report device with the scan disk command instead of the check disk and see chapter 9 with the most information scan disk. Check the floppy disk drive with A with check whether all the file with the show of the continuous sector of the tab of the MS check disk age wildcard asterisk wildcard extension. MS-DOS same report with the preceding adding the following messages all specified file with a contingency. If any of the were stored with the non-contingent sector of the MSA with the display with the name of the number of the non-contingency block will complete with the message. Check with the floppy disk, the drive with A, same time with the display with the name of each of the file with the MS disk A, the drive volume, parameter V. MS-DOS displays display with the name of each of the floppy disk, add with the usual report with the display with the name, memory available, the list for the file, scroll to the top of the screen with the remember that the view all that you can free with the display with the pressing the pause key with the control number to lock key with the more command. If the files on floppy disk are organized directly with the V parameter, check disk command with the list of the directories as well with the files command with the directory of the chapter described in chapter 8 tree files. Combine the check disk parameters one command with the check disk of the A drive with the wildcard asterisk wild extension parameter V. You can check with the floppy disk drive with A check all of the fragmentation display with the name of all of the files. With the check disk command file with the name of the error with the directory of the display with the message with the XX loss the allocation with the units with the YY chain with the convert the log with the chain with the files you have although this message might not look confusing, this simply means check disk has found some of the storage units of the disk have been used but because of the program some of the system problems are unlinked for the particular file with the type of the check the disk command with the parameter F with the parameter load. Then type Y with the convert loss chain with the message appear with the MS stuff. Return to these loss chain with the file within the file with the name of the extension file with the name N dash check with the N number 0 is such as 00001. Depending on the type of the error, whether you call with the units with love with the MS maybe they may not be able to recover the data with the check diff the command with a complete you can look for the contents of the file with the MS DOS enter to decide whether or not to contain the information you want to save. If you do not want to save the information, delete the files, make storage space available to new spaces. Assigning and checking the disk volume label. The label the command assign the chain with the delete the volume label the floppy disk the hard disk the two parameter label the drive the new label the drive the letter of the following colon followed by a colon or the drive the A drive contained with the disk the volume label the change the new label the volume label the same with the disk in the drive. The amended drive, the MS DOS assume that you wanted to change the label to this. Then, in the current drive of the new label, the MS DOS prompts you to enter the new label. Examples: change the disk volume and label at the beginning of the chapter. Use the parameter V option with the formatted sign with the volume of the label, the DOS disk, and floppy disk. Sometimes you want to use the volume label. You can also use the label the command. Put your same floppy disk in drive A with the one type of the label the command. Label drive A. MS DOS responds something like this: drive A volume serial number volume label. Sample that this isn't really MS-DOS, so change the MI disk to typing the my disk and press enter. If the floppy disk has volume label you want to delete it, you reply with the prompt pressing enter key with the type of the MS-DOS. You're next to want to delete the current volume, yes or no, you would reply yes, delete the volume. Or displaying with the disk volume label. The disk volume command also displays the volume label, the volume serial number, the hard drive, the floppy disk on after the new label. The label does not is some of the descriptive volume label, the floppy disk, the format, but you can use the volume command to make sure the label you're using the copy format disk flat faster and either check with the directory with the volume command. The using one parameter volume, the drive of the letter. Followed by colon the drive of the size of the A drive of the container of the floppy disk with the volume label, the display with the emit with the drive of the MS DOS display with the volume label, the disk with the current drive, display the volume label, the floppy disk drive A volume, C drive volume A drive, MS DOS display volume label. Floppy disk has no volume with the MSC respond with the volume of the drive A has no label of volume with the volume serial number. Chapter 7: the managing your devices.